Martinez.
Are you ready for a comeback, ladies and gentlemen? I'll tell you, we have been challenged, no doubt, since January of this year. We would continue to fight the good fight, but don't give up, and don't lose the very thing that has held this country together. That is your faith, the pursuit of the truth. And look, at this too shall pass. We will get on the other side of this, because the things that you have to look at is what is sustainable. And what we find to be sustainable, regardless of the pressure, number one is the truth. Number two are the noble values and morality that we hold to in this country. No doubt some people are abandoning these moral moorings, and we're paying a price for that. But I'm telling you, even they are counting on people of goodwill to hold this together so that we can get on the other side of this madness that's happening right now. With us is Richard Manning. He's the president of Americans for Limited Government, and we're going to be talking about giving in, speaking of which, to socializing everything from medicine to our police departments. Richard, welcome back. Good to have you with us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Bill. Thank you for having me. And I can't emphasize enough how much what you said coming in is important. We have to remember God's in control.
Yes.
We aren't. We've been placed here on earth for a time such as this. It's not supposed to be easy. And if people have any doubt, look at Gideon.
Yes.
And I'll go back to my VeggieTales days of being a Sunday school teacher. But Gideon and the peas, he just kept cutting down the number of peas. God said, nope, that's too many. Nope, that's too many. And the few stood up.
Yes.
And God delivered the enemy. So truth is truth. I don't get to tell God what to do. None of us do. Our job is to be the person we're supposed to be. Fight for truth, fight for freedom. And in doing that, we will play our role, the role we're supposed to play in this country. Even if we don't see fruits today, the fruits that we see may not exist until tomorrow or months from now or years from now. But we're supposed to play our role that God's assigned to us, and that's what we are going to do, what I'm going to do. And I'm going to stand and fight for freedom. I'm going to fight for our Christian values, and we have to do that together.
I'm right alongside you, Richard. Let me tell you, our conversation this morning started out with Liz Peek. She's a Fox News contributor, and we talked about, the clarion call, for the silent majority to step up. The silent majority can no longer be silent. It needs to speak up. These are, our brothers and sisters of like mind who want to preserve the American dream. I remind our audience that, go back to day one and the creation of this great American experiment. It's not like there was 1,000% agreement on this idea. There were antithetical forces. They have been there from day one. But those antithetical forces has made us stronger. And by experience, we've realized, and, experience firsthand, if we've done any traveling and you see other countries and how they operate, and you come back to the understanding that America, by far, is the number one form of government outside of heaven. And so here we are, and we're starting to lose grip of this, but we cannot let it go for the sake of the next generation that's coming up, because just as our parents, the greatest generation, fought a world war, but they also preserved freedom to be handed off to us. What kind of freedom, what kind of liberty are we going to hand off to the next generation? That will define the legacy of this generation, our generation, Richard.
I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the things that this relates to is how the left always tries to take advantage of any crisis and create pathways to a socialized, total and complete Marxism in our country. And I'm no longer going to call it socialism because we're not seeing violent overthrow. So it's Marxism. Just understand the rioters in the street define so-called progressives. They no longer are progressives because they haven't said no to those rioters. They've accepted them. That makes them Marxists.
Exactly.
Violent overthrow of our government. But having said that, one of the things Nancy Pelosi has been trying to do is to create a pathway for socialized medicine, something that on its own we win. But in the context of what they're doing in terms of the COVID, the Chinese-originated virus that everyone wants to call COVID, but it's a Chinese-originated virus, let's be clear.
Right.
And the impact of that is what she wants to do. She wants to create a one-size-fits-all rate-paying system for our medical system across the board, across the nation, which her own chief deputy, Frank Pullen from New Jersey, called, this is a necessary step to get to socialized medicine. So she wants to create a one-size-fits-all rate-paying system that makes it so the doctors and healthcare providers in Wyoming or in Minneapolis or in Raleigh, North Carolina, are all being reimbursed the same amount, even if the cost of providing those services is different in those areas.
Exactly.
And they're doing it under the guise of something called surprise medical billing, which was a creation of Obamacare, by the way. Mm-hmm. And so you have this situation where patients are getting bills, huge, massive bills. And they're saying, wait a second, how come I didn't know about any of this? How come my insurance isn't covering it? Mm-hmm. And rather than having the insurance company work it out with the healthcare providers, instead, they're putting it on the patient's shoulders, creating a crisis, which then they're going to solve by saying, oh, we're going to have one size fits all. The answer is the answer is different. The answer is, let's have the providers create a system where the providers and the insurers have to go to arbitration. And they make their case, and the arbitrator decides who gets paid what, and what the insurers have to pay under these circumstances. If we have that simple system, we get the patient, and normally I like patients to be involved in their billing, but in this case, they're being used as a pawn. What we want is those two things to happen. Senator Bill Cassidy has that bill. That's the right answer to surprise medical billing. It's the only logical way to solve this Obamacare-created crisis.
Exactly. Well, Richard, that aside, in terms of payment, just in terms of delivery, America got a little taste of socialism with this COVID-19 scare and what we went through. And, if we don't go into this with our eyes wide open, I mean, after 8 years of, not fully 8 years, but it's been 8 years plus, but under Obamacare, we have seen and witnessed firsthand what a disaster this is. And Nancy Pelosi, the very person that said, which I thought was so audacious of her to say it, and I just couldn't believe the way America responded, that there should have been more outrage for her to say something as ridiculous as you've got to pass it to find out what's in it. Really, this is anti-American. There's no such way that legislation is supposed to be presented like that, where you have a bunch of pop goes the weasel effects in a piece of legislation, and this is what Obamacare delivered to us. I mean, it was one humongous lie. We didn't get to keep our same doctor. We didn't pay less. I mean, everything that the President of the United States said was one lie after another, and this is why Obamacare is not standing. It's unsustainable. And we need to approach this in such a way, and what you're talking about is a good start in terms of the delivery of world-class health care that is, deserving for Americans.
You're exactly right, and it's remember this, the Democrats designed Obamacare to fail. Because the objective was to have it
single
fail.
Payer.
The solution, have the solution be single payer. So they designed it to fail, and now the system's failing, and so what they're now doing is saying, the solution is for the government to take care of it all, and the one size fits all rate paying system is part of that, and that's why it needs to be rejected. But let me go to the bigger point here.
We got about 40 seconds left on this side of the break here, Richard. Go ahead.
Bigger point is this: America's worth fighting for. The idea of America is worth fighting for, and patriots need to stand up and fight. And I'm not talking about battling in the street, but we need to let our members of Congress know that we expect them to do better. We expect them to stand for freedom. We expect them to be out front and be leaders and not be followers. We expect that of them, and if they don't deliver, they will be replaced, whether they've got an R or a D behind their name, I don't care. If they won't fight for freedom, they are part of the problem.
Without a doubt. Richard Manning, president of Americans for Limited Government, continues with us on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors
values, faith, service. They still exist here. Bill Martinez, live.
Hey, welcome back. 14 minutes before the top of the hour. As you can gather, what this radio show has always been about. It's about driving solutions. We go out of our way to pursue the truth, no matter where it leads. And I have to say, we have to go out of our way these days. It's not commonsensical anymore. The truth has been hidden. We've exchanged the truth for a lie. We get confused now. You got Merriam-Webster. Are you ready for this, Richard? They are redefining racism. That racism can only be considered as a white problem. It's not considered as a human issue. It is now, according to Merriam-Webster, it's the white people's fault. This is what we've come down to.
No, Webster's rolling over in his grave.
Exactly.
And it's I guess Miriam had her way, but it's yes.
Well, and think about Noel Webster for just a moment, because you mentioned him totally by name. You know, what was his ambition when he started out, when he wrote the dictionary? What was his drive and understanding and passion about why he was motivated to give us the dictionary?
He wanted people to have common language. It's a simple. He wanted people to have an understanding of what words mean.
Exactly.
And so we can communicate. Because when we don't agree with what words mean, we can't communicate. We're speaking a foreign language to one another, and that's what we're. And so when we say truth, the other people, when they hear the word truth, they don't necessarily hear the same word as you and I are speaking.
Right.
And because if you don't believe in absolutes, you don't believe that there's absolute truth and everything else, then truth is fungible. Truth is whatever you happen to expose to your reality. You can redefine truth based upon your experiences rather than having an absolute plumb line of truth.
Exactly.
And people who don't have that absolute plumb line of truth have no capacity to judge things based upon anything other than kind of the rolling seas of emotion that happen to be flowing through them. So a simple word like truth suddenly becomes very difficult. And this is not new. When Jesus was talking to Pontius Pilate,
yes,
and Jesus told Pontius Pilate that he was the truth, and Pontius Pilate replied, in words that could have been spoken by a secular humanist today, what is truth? Chaos veritas.
Right.
And in doing that, he basically said, truth is whatever I say truth is, because I've got the power of the sword, or here in modern times with communism, the power of the gun. And as a result, I define what truth is, rather than God defining what truth is. That's the singular difference that makes us have this debate about what words mean, because if we can't agree on what the word truth means, everything else is up for grabs. Right. And it's not new. Jesus had it happen to him, standing there being sentenced in front of the crowd. He had that happen to him, and so we should not be surprised that Satan would use the same trick today.
Exactly. And Rick, you could say that that very essential is one of the founding pillars of our U.S. Constitution. You remove that part of the structure and foundation out from underneath the U.S. Constitution, and it begins to implode on itself. And this is what we're seeing right now before our eyes, where you got these young kids coming out of colleges today, our universities, that they've been indoctrinated and they've been moved away from the truth. They've bought into this woke society narrative that says truth is relative. Look, I'll tell you what, you don't have to pay me $250,000. I'm not going to give you a degree for it, but let me give you something much more valuable. And that is that they lied to you. You bought into a lie. And the sooner you reconcile that, the happier you're going to be. And, what we all want at the end of the day, we want this sense of productivity, Richard. We want to feel like we're contributing. Regardless of race, color, creed, at the end of the day, we want to know, hey, look, we have offered society something and have contributed to society, to our families, to our communities, something that leaves it better than in the manner in which we found it.
I think that is, we all have, it's part of the giant hole in our heart that Wesley describes,
Yes.
In terms of us wanting to have that filled. And, when God fills it, we have God's purpose. But but everybody has that hole, and they attempt to fill it through various different means. But, when we talk about truth and we talk about college, there's some simple things. Somebody who goes and becomes an electrician, doesn't go to college, knows that if they touch the black wire, they're going to die. Okay, that's absolute truth. Okay, that is truth. Somebody who goes and they become a plumber knows lefty loosey, righty tighty, lefty loosey.
Right.
They know that if they turn it the wrong way, it's not going to get their results. That's absolute truth. That is just the way it's set up. We know that if we drive on the wrong side of the road, we're going to have a head-on collision because that's the way the system's set up. So there are certain things that if you have not been to our university systems, you understand truth because there is a reality in your world that is actual, tangible reality.
Exactly.
Electricity will kill you if you touch the wrong wire in the wrong way. That's true. So they learn not to do that. In college, what you learn is that all the wires are equal. And it doesn't matter which wire you touch or how you put them together. Somehow, since all the wires are equal, they have to be all treated equally. Well, no. The wires are not equal because one of those wires will kill you.
Exactly.
And they don't understand that some of the wires they're touching, related to the secular humanist idea that we have, that all ideas are equal, that all truths are equal, is actually touching the black wire, and it is deadly.
Yeah. Talk about reinventing the wheel, right? All for the sake of, I don't know, the theoretical. They want to return, avoid historical significance, empirical evidence. Let's go back into theory where all things are relative and possible. And why should we go and recreate the mistakes of previous generations just to say that we did? And waste so much time and resources as opposed to taking what we know right now to be empirical and make it better and more dramatic as a result of investing our resources more constructively. But no, for the sake of theory, for the sake of the educated elite, we're going to recreate the wheel once again and waste our time. And meanwhile, you're going to have people who've bought into that that doctrine and realize what a waste. What a waste.
People always ask, well, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, the single most important thing you can do is elect a governor who's going to take control of your university system, elect state legislators who will take control of the university system and the state local education systems, elect school board members who are going to be fighting for actual information to be fed into kids, as opposed to the idea that anything that you can touch the black wire. Okay. Right. That's a really, really important, it's probably the most important thing we can do. And I'm talking now long-term. We've got short-term problems. Long-term problem is we can't allow another generation, 2 generations to be created along the lines of this past one, because if we give up and continue to believe the lie that the academics have told us, that politicians shouldn't be involved in academics and curriculum, that they should leave it to the academics. What we've effectively done is we've said the people shouldn't be involved in the training of the minds of our children, and because those represent you, the people. And so we have to take back the education system, and we have to take it back in first of all, in those states where you have Republicans, kind of a full Republican slate, and in other states, we need to change the makeup of the state legislature and the governorship, so we can, in fact, once again, have schools which teach people to read, write, do arithmetic, and think in a critical thinking way.
It has
so
to
they
be
can understand and use logic.
Right, exactly. Well, there is enough evidence out here. I mean, we're seeing it on full display, and we're seeing where the big problems right now, in a very binary sort of way, and result is that those democratic policies have destroyed local communities. And I say that we have to hold everybody accountable. Just because they have an R or a D in front of their name, regardless, you still need to know what your North Star is. What is the standard? What do we need? How do we need to hold them accountable? And first of all, it starts with us individually saying that we're interested, we're serious enough about it, not interested in a casual sense, but that we're vested in the future of our country. We're vested in the future of our kids, that we are going to fight for that which is right on their behalf, to make sure that they're properly educated. I mean, I go back, we're talking, the turn of, in the 1800s, before the American school system was taken over by progressives, there was a little book, I don't know, about 75 pages was all it was. The New England right. Reader, right? And the kids that were being turned out with that 75-page little booklet that were educated in public schools at that time, their level of success compared to today is not even close. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells you that what we're doing is not working. If parents, let me just put it in very simple terms, if your kid gets sick and is gradually becoming more and more sick, you're going to fight like crazy to get everything you can to have your kid be well.
Right.
Well, we have, as in Hamlet, it's used from Polonius,